The word mantra. It's a combination of two words, man, meaning mind, or the thinking process, and tra, to be released from. And it is one of the yogic practices which helps us to be released from all the struggle of our individual identity. And we come together in satsang to bring to our attention this struggle. So that we can be released. A few more friends are about to join us, so we'll just take a few minutes sitting in silence. You may want to repeat this mantra inside, or just sit quietly sometime. Just gently rub the palms of your hands together. Bring them to prayer at your third eye. Just create a bit of pressure with the knuckles of your thumbs at your third eye and gaze into that center space. And then opening the palms of your hands, cup your eyes. Open your eyes. Some of you may want to keep your eyes closed to listen, that's fine. Lovely to see everyone. Welcome. Lovely to see you. Wonderful. As I said, coming out of the meditation, satsang is to highlight the human struggle so that we are released from it. Because everyone wants to be released, but if we don't realize what it is that is binding us, how will we become released from it? Because if you are trying to find release through changing other people, my guess is it won't work sufficiently enough. Has anyone else discovered that? Although we try, and we still try. And we try to change others, and we try to change our behavior, and we try and change our habits. And we find ourselves, maybe there's some value to it, a little value. But people really are difficult to change to suit you, but maybe changing some habits is helpful, but it doesn't really get to the root of it. And so satsang is to talk about what is the root of a human struggle, and also to see struggle through many different ways, because we're very familiar with our own struggles, which is the story of our struggle. But if we don't go to the root, we won't often then relate that root expressed in different ways with other people. So the wise one has that knowledge of the root of the suffering, and that is why you can glean knowledge from someone who has realized that root, even though they may have lived a completely different history to you, maybe a different conditioning pattern to you, that essentially you'll be able to relate to each other, knowing this root of identification of the human being with this story we have told ourselves, which keeps cementing the identification of this body and mind. So if satsang is the question, who are you? And knowing who you are, one will be released from struggles. Then we have to bring to question, well, then what is this sense of me, you, that is creating a kind of block or obstacle to freedom, to love, to peace? We have to bring that to the light, to the surface. So the wise ones said that peace is when one has unfolded the vision of oneness, or the realization that life is not actually divided into separate things, although through the senses and the mental understanding of that information through the senses, it certainly appears to be like that. What's your name, sweetheart?
Sarah.
Sarah. If I said, I am the same as Sarah, there will be some question coming up there. Well, how can you be the same as Sarah? Until now, I only know the name of Sarah. I don't know any history of Sarah. I don't know whether she has children or whether she's from New Zealand or anything about her. And yet, with the vision of oneness, I can say, I am the same as Sarah, although we have lived different stories. So what is the Sarah that is the same as the Shikhaa? This is what we come to satsang to discover. So it's not obvious, right, that Sarah is the same as Shikhaa, because Shikhaa has this body and Sarah has that body. And that body went through a whole lineup of events. And this Shikhaa went through a lineup of different events. What is that which is the same? So now Sarah is seeing this body through the light in her eyes. Actually, even I shouldn't say I should have said the light of the eye, meaning that I, the I that says myself. She is seeing that even the light, whether it's the light of I, then transmitted through the light of her eyes, that light, do you think, is a separate light from this eye seeing through these eyes? What do you think? Do you think that is a separate light of seeing? No, that's right. So how do we discover that? This is what we've come to discuss and talk and share together. What is described as duality consciousness, meaning that Sarah is completely different from Shikhaa. Let's examine that first, because if I just say we are the same, it's going to be difficult to really accept that. And I wouldn't expect you to accept that because it doesn't appear to be like that. And if I said Sarah is the same as the whole world, that they're one and the same thing, that would also be maybe difficult to accept, although maybe Sarah could accept it. But for some of us, it took some time to accept that who you are is exactly what the world is. Because then it appears through duality consciousness, no, I'm just a little thing in the world. And then the wise one said, no, actually, you are a very big thing. And the world is a very small thing in you. And you have actually created this world. That takes some time for us slow learners. Sarah got it immediately to understand. So we have to now discuss or to bring to light, what does it mean, duality consciousness? What is that mechanism that brings the whole experience of being a human being to appear as separate things? And not only how that mechanism is developed, but being developed through the repetition of body identification, which means someone has told us, you are John. John name belongs to that body. Now, first, that's our first layer of identification, name and form, body and name. You are a name. First thing you learn, Mama, Papa, and you'll learn your own name, perhaps. I don't know when that comes in the sequence of things, but very young, you learn your own name. Have you ever tried with very young children, especially around 3, when they're feeling that they have some knowledge, and you don't call them their correct name? What do? They correct you, right? They do not like it. Unless my niece, her daughter, my great niece, she went through a very long period, I think about a year when she was around that age, of waking up in the morning and announcing her name for the day. And they weren't normal names. They were just sounds. To her, they were a name. But it wasn't like she woke up and said, I'm Mary one day and Jane the next. They were very unusual names. And so if I went to visit, I would have to ask, what's the name of the day? Because if you didn't get the right name of the day, hands on hips, no, I am Shikhaa. Okay, Shikhaa. And you had to call her Shikhaa the whole day. So her ego was starting to develop, playing with this idea of a name. Now the identity is starting to get built around that name. This is my name. This name belongs to me, and that me is this body, this individual me. And we now know the whole story, slowly and slowly, how much that ego identification gets layer and layer and layer upon developed. Because then, of course, after name and form comes all the qualities. Be a good girl. Be successful. Be able. Be lovable. Be liked. All of this. Slowly and slowly through socialization, and now the brutal fast tracking of that socialization at school. Boy, that is really can be very difficult for a lot of people, that you have to be accepted. And in order to be accepted, you have to have all the right qualities. And so you develop those qualities because you got to be accepted, because a human being, as with this individual sense of being a human being, is an extremely precarious situation if they are left all alone. And that's why you see that developmental stage in children in the playground, who's included and who's not, and who's the leader and who's the followers, and all of that. You're watching human beings, little human beings, figuring it all out. And in that figuring it all out, they are developing an individual sense. And this struggle comes because something in them, a kind of freedom, doesn't want to be restricted there. So we compromise. And I'm not saying it with any sense of it being bad, although it doesn't sound very nice the way I'm presenting it. This is the natural way of things, and it's not bad necessarily. It's the very grit that then can work towards unfolding the vision of oneness. The vision that is the same in Sarah as it is in Shikhaa, that there is one vision seeing through many eyes, but one power of sight. So in order to have that knowledge, there has to be some work, some grit, some effort, and something to compare against. Because that whole identification process, as we know, developing a sense of an ego, it is the great struggle of it is that it's all in comparison either to someone or to something. So now your sense of being great or being loved or being acceptable in some way is only in comparison to something else. When you go home, you put on your pajamas and you're alone, if you have the privilege of doing that, and you just, maybe you flop in front of TV or in front of a book or watch something, there's no sense that you have to be someone in front of someone. And that's the big pull that people have towards family, to gather around them a few people that they feel familiar with so they can drop that sense of comparison. Is the person who I'm relating to, or the job, the task, the job, the effort that I'm making, is it going to reward me to make me great? Is it going to reflect back to me some kind of greatness? That is a great struggle. The need to be great and the very strong need also not to be made small. So all in comparison to a sense of separation, me and it, me and other. And that, as I said, that other is either a person, a situation, even a feeling within our own environment and our own self, me and my emotions. And then, of course, me and myself. And me and something bigger than me. What is that relation? So this sense of comparison, unless we really study it and examine to see what it is in context of the whole human story, we're not going to know how to be released from it. We're not going to know how to release that struggle. There's a song that Mayank and I are going to sing in the kirtan, and I thought I'll give you guys a heads up because it's a new song. So I'm going to teach it to you in the next session. So then when everyone comes to the kirtan, they'll think, wow, these people picked it up so quickly. And you'll be greater than them. You'll get a prize for that somehow. No, because I want to focus in the next session on mantra, how valuable it is to use this mantra. And as I said a little at the beginning, coming out of our meditation, meditation together, we sung the mantra. Mantra is to be released from the mind. But we've got to know what this mind is, because there's also, if we are a someone in relation separately to this mind, like a little box that speaks out of turn, and I can't somehow stuff into the box and make it all look pretty sometimes, and it spills over in weird ways and does odd things, and you're trying to push it back into all those square boxes which you were told were the acceptable thing to do. If we don't understand it, we just keep doing the same thing. We have to understand these thinking processes. Mind is not an entity. It's not a separate thing from you. It is an aspect of you, of thinking, that is a magnificent, absolutely magnificent gift. The gift of communication, the gift of being able to express yourself so that I can be resourceful, get what I need. How much of our survival and our way of being as human beings is based on communication. If we don't have clear communication, we're going to feel that struggle. So it's an amazing communicative tool. Mind is also a beautiful way to express the beauty of nature through poetry or prose or just talking about it. It is a way to express appreciation for each other. That's what the thinking processes do. They do all of this stuff. So I think that came to my mind just now, the word is hell-bent. Is that the word? I'm quite adamant to not paint the mind or our processes of thinking to be something that we have to somehow control and somehow bend into shape as a naughty thing. Because if we understand it fully, we will have a beautiful relationship with it. We can bring to light to understand this mind fully. Maybe we don't fully understand it, and that's why we have often an odd struggle with it. So release from the mind doesn't mean, oh, that horrible thing that stays tagged to me day and night, I want to cut it and throw it somewhere. That's not what release means. Release means release from the struggle with it. You can be released from the struggle with your own thinking, if we understand it. How can we be released if we don't understand it fully? And comparison is a big aspect of the mind. Me and it. It appears that we are in relation to an it, or a person. I'm saying how now a person is also an it here. So in this relationship, there has to be greater and lesser. There has to be some gain, some loss. There has to be something you are going to get from it, or something it can take from you. And you may not like that system, but that's the system, and you cannot change it, because the duality consciousness is bound in the pairs of opposites. And we may have managed our life to be confined so we don't somehow allow those swings to be obvious. But if you step back a little and you start to see humanity as a whole, wow, do we ever experience incredible conflict in opposition. War is an intense duality consciousness. And people die for differences. So we may not be in a war right now in an obvious way, but there is a war going on in a subtle sense within every single being. And so if we can turn our attention away from the things that we think are binding us and think are tying us up into a kind of knot, and if we can know how that knot is developed and how that knot can be released, first we have to know all the things and all the people you are in a relation to and all your experiences are not at all responsible for that knot. So the first thing is to stop finding responsible those things for your inner knot that are not responsible. No, the person, no matter how annoying they are not responsible for your disquiet within yourself. They are not. The political systems you may like or not like, and you may even be quite active in trying to change them, and that's all fine. But they are not responsible for your state of lack of peace. Don't know how that sentence came out there, but you know what I mean. Whatever state of mind you're living, whatever state of being you're living, the government is not responsible for that. And so, at best, a government can provide for your physical needs, sewage and roads and things like that. However inefficiently they may be, you rightly may want to participate in improving that, and that's all fine. But I don't look to my government for realization of my true self. And I think if you do, you may be sorely disappointed, because the people who are in leadership, they don't know themselves. So if you're angry at that because, and for whatever reason, you are looking in the wrong place. But it's the same. It's obviously ridiculous looking at the government, but we look to relationships, to the relationships with our children, and to my personality. Well, my personality should bring me peace. The way I am received by other people, if I really do all the right things to win everyone's favor, then I will be loved and then I will be at peace. And you can try really hard to do that, but then you get someone who cannot like you for whatever reason. They do not like you, and they will find fault with you, and you can't change that. So where is your peace now? It's broken. So knowing where your peace is not, knowing where your release is not, is a huge work, because it really appears that it is. And something will bother you, something will make you feel constricted, someone will feel like they've clipped your wings or put you down, and you're like, don't do that to me. And it will feel like that. So despite what things feel like, despite what appears, we have to know something deeper, and it is really a personal work. It's so personal, meaning only you can do this. And that is incredibly empowering. That's so incredibly empowering to see that the struggle is in the state of duality consciousness, not in the person. That I am creating a sense of myself being separate from everything. How do we realize that I am not separate from everything? One thing that I have learned about the mind and all its many glorious qualities, as I mentioned a few, it somehow doesn't have the ability to understand oneness. So we need something else. We need another tool. Like if you have a needle and it's very, very fine, it's very good for stitching two things together. Like two bits of fabric, you can finely stitch those two bits of fabric together. If you take an axe and you try and stitch that fabric together with an axe, it's not going to work. The axe is the instrument for dividing. The needle is the instrument for uniting. So we have to use an instrument of uniting. And what could that be? And this is what leads us to the importance of meditation. Satsang enlightened us or brought us to a great knowledge of where peace can be found, knowing also where peace is not. That meditation is really that higher intelligence, and it is intelligence, but it is not the intelligence that was developed in the playground or in the classroom or in relation to your work that I've described, built the separateness of the ego identification, not that kind of a mind. So the same mind that that was built in terms of separation can now be used in its highest capacity, in its highest power, can be used to be uniting, to unite and to see beyond all the differences. And that is something really beautiful. And that's what I wanted to share with you today about mantra. How to now turn the mind that is otherwise going always to division, comparison, struggle, and terrible ambition in there to try and resolve the struggle through ambition. That's a big thing that we do. The more I have, the less struggle there'll be. The more I am, the greater I appear, the less struggle there'll be. So in that struggle is incredible ambition. And I don't mean just ambition for money. I mean that striving, that deep and relentless striving for more, for more, for more. And not just more things, but to be more. And then you stop. And what is meditation? The same thinking that is there always. You can't cut it. You can't kill it. You can't suppress it. You have to use it now. Use it, and now we take it higher, or you can say more expanded. I would love a time for you to talk also, but let's now take it there ourselves. Close your eyes. What are we left with now? Sitting here. There's you and thinking. A little bit also the senses, you're hearing, but it's not that powerful. No one's blasting rock music or techno music here. There's no big drill happening. So hearing is pretty subtle. We're not seeing anything. Our hands are not making anything. Our feet are not walking anywhere. Our tongue is not tasting anything. Now we are left with thinking. And there's you and thinking. And that's all fine. Meditation is going on. But what we have the power to do, instead of just sitting thinking, what separates meditation from just thinking with eyes closed, is we start tuning in. Who is this one that I call I or me that can observe thinking? Who is aware of thinking? Now the thinking mind will be a bit puzzled here because it cannot find a form of you. It can, through an image in your mind, see the body you and all the events surrounding this body. But that is not the you that is of this deeper awareness. So do not try and find a form of you. There is no form of you. We can use an example like the sky. Cannot see sky, although we think that we see sky through the color blue, but that is not actually the sky. And yet, all exists because of sky. Sky space. All is existing within sky space. And yet sky space has no form. And all forms, all bodies, all trees, all waters, all winds, all fires, all wood, all metal, exists because of sky space. So we use this example as a helpful way to open this higher knowledge of yourself as pure awareness. That thinking, like wood and metal and fire and water, thinking exists because of you. That you are not bound in the story of you. The story that belongs to this individual you, body you, history you, memory you, feeling you, sensing you. Awareness is pure. No modification exists. And even though all those thinking, feeling, doing, memorying, imagining things are existing, they're existing within you. And that you is pure. It doesn't become anything. It remains always pure like sky space. So you are pure awareness. And you need to meditate on that. I am pure awareness. Thoughts will come and go. It doesn't matter. Let them be very subtle. They are just on the periphery and your attention is at the center. I am pure awareness. Now the mind is being used to transcend duality and realize oneness. Because you have no beginning and no end, no boundary. And there is no my there in comparison to a you. It is pure. And therefore it is also free. It has been released from the boundaries of ego identification, duality identification. Meditate on your true self. I is pure. I is free. And it is pure and free unconditionally, which means it does not depend on thinking or feeling or sensing or doing. It is ever free. Unconditionally free. So I is pure, free, forever present. Here presence is that sky space. I is pure, free, ever present.